All right, everyone, this is Shanae Jones, and what you're witnessing is the recorded version of my Instagram Live, which is about to go on now. So give me a second. I'm going to start the live, and hopefully you enjoy our conversation tonight. Let's go. Yay. Hello everyone, my name is Shanae Jones and this is KNKY, which stands for No New Kinky You. Hello everyone, my name is Shanae Jones and this is KNKY, which stands for No New. I am playing with some things, so excuse me for the bit of a break. Let me preface it by saying that we do this conversation every Wednesday. We talk about different topics based on sexual health, sexual questions, sexual curiosity, sexual issues, and it's really about trying to open up and encourage and engage us to have grown-up conversations about sex. I'm a certified sex coach, certified through Sex Coach University, and the topic tonight, which is the impact of sexual abuse on men and boys. Now, I'm not a man, I'm not a boy, but I have had conversations with people, I've done my research, and it's a very serious conversation that impacts a lot of people, but it kind of sits in the dark because it's again one of those topics that we are afraid to talk about. So we hear all kinds of stories about sexual abuse, and we've kind of become immune to it in a way, and we feel bad when we hear about it, but at the same time it's so sadly commonplace. Yes, girl. It's so sadly commonplace in how it is that we deal with societal issues, right? There are more instances than we are even prepared to accept, acknowledge openly, to say that there are men who suffer from sexual abuse. Now, when we think of sexual abuse, we automatically go to girls and to women as people who suffer from this, but it's not necessarily the case. Proportionately, young men and boys are the ones who stay quiet about sexual trauma and sexual abuse, and that shouldn't be the case. Sexual assault and abuse can happen to anyone regardless of age, sexual orientation, or gender identity. It happens. And because of stereotypes of what men are supposed to be, of what we feel a man should be able to handle, most men don't feel comfortable having these conversations about being abused, and especially when it comes to reporting it. So black men especially have suffered from sexual assault since slavery, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But these actions turn into challenges that are unique to men because of how society looks upon them. When you think of sexual assault against a man specifically, you think of the Catholic Church, and I'm not attacking anybody or your religion or anything like that, but that's the image that we see. We see Catholic priests in trying to molest the little altar boys, or you see the more glorified versions of teachers, adult female teachers, who take advantage of their students. So but it happens in all kinds of ways. Men who have survived sexual assault, they typically feel shamed, and they have self-doubt because they feel that they should have been strong enough. They should have been, able to not allow that situation to happen to them. Like they embrace it a little bit differently than women do. And so, it causes them to feel ashamed, really. And, and this is a physiological thing, that sometimes when a man is going through a sexual assault, that their bodies respond in a way that is contradictory to how it is that they feel about the situation that is going on. So they may become erect, they may ejaculate, but it's not because that they invited it or that they felt any type of pleasure from it or that they wanted it. That's not the case at all. So what we have to realize is that the physiological and physical response of during sex and sexuality, being sexually assaulted, your body has a physiological response that is not of your control. So, if you happen to respond that way, it can confuse a man. It can make him question his own sexuality. It can make him wonder whether or not he brought this on himself. And just like all sexual abuse victims, it's not your fault. You don't have to live in a world where you think, oh, I brought this on, or what is it about me? So there are some feelings that can come about because, again, sexual assault, and especially for the predator, is not about the sex. It's more about the power, more about taking advantage of the person in the situation that you're in. So what can come about from this is really, that anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. You can have flashbacks from the events. You can have eating disorders. You can avoid people and places that remind you of the assault or the abuse. You can have fear of what's happening and having a sense of a shortened future. Like everything becomes a little bit uncertain because you just don't know what is going on and what could happen. You feel like less of a man. You no longer have control over your own body. You start to question what it is that you're going through. You feel on edge, or you're unable to relax, or you have difficulty sleeping. So you have these emotional triggers that manifest into this physical state of being that just impacts you. You don't have control. There's a sense of blame or shame or of not being able to stop it. Again, like this was not your fault. This was not something that you caused. So, but you take on that role, you take on that ownership, and it really is a sad thing. You can withdraw from your relationships. You can have an increased sense of isolation. You worry about disclosing this to your family, your friends, because of fear of judgment. And again, you can have concerns about your own sexual orientation. Now, I will say that sexual assault is in no way related to your sexual orientation. If you were, again, men can be sexually assaulted by both men and women. So if you're sexually assaulted by a man, you may feel like, am I gay? Or, what does this mean for me? I've been with another man. So, but that interaction with that man was not voluntary. So no, there's no correlation between sexual assault and your sexual orientation. And I want you, if nothing else, to remember that. If you are a person that has gone through this, it's quite understandable why you would have these feelings. I don't think that there should be anybody that should judge you. It doesn't mean that it doesn't happen, but if it does, understand that there are people that will be your advocate, have your back, have your side about all of the things that you could possibly be going through. There are things that we can do as a community, as a person that, okay, so I'll answer your question. Repeatedly in jail is still the same thing. You're in a population where it happens because somebody is taking advantage of you. You are in a position of lesser power, and you're not in a position to effectively fight back. So a lot of times they will concede to the situation and then block it out, and it just like as if it never happened. But it still will have an impact on your relationships when you come home. if you go in, and I'm not going to say that there are guys that are homosexual that if they happen to get locked up, feel that it's a position where they can take advantage of their sexuality in a place where it's not so much so frowned upon, because again, it's not common practice. I don't want to call it common practice, but it's not unheard of, right? So you feel a little bit more secure because you're not coming at it from a position of being homosexual. You're coming at it from a position of being, I'm the bully, I'm the man, I'm going to take that, I'm in control, I'm running this shit. It's a very hard place to be in, especially if you're the victim in a situation. All you're trying to do is survive an already fucked up place or already fucked up situation. If you are a person, being attacked, being assaulted isn't necessarily something that will change your sexual preference. So we talked before about the Kingsley scale, and then there's actually the Klein scale too, where it says that our sexuality is fluid, that at points we can, and there's actually a thought that says no one is 100% heterosexual and 100% homosexual, that there's the scale that we go back and forth on, right? There could be a moment where you engage in sexual activity and feel and it feels good. The part that will feel bad is the assault and the attack. So you have to kind of separate those things. If you are in a position where you are being attacked, take it as a heterosexual woman, right? As a heterosexual woman, that if I am sexually assaulted by a man, my body again can respond to the point where it feels pleasure. You can be raped by women, can be raped by women. It happens. We just happen to be talking about sexual assault on men tonight. If you're the aggressor, the conversation is really about the power struggle, the dominance. It's less about the sex. The sex is the result of trying to dominate that person, and sex is the means by which that they are trying to do it, so if you happen to be in a position where you're dealing with somebody who's gone through this and you want to try to help them, listen, be that open ear. And listening is not just this void no, actually listen to them and be that person that's that ear. Validate their feelings. It's okay to feel the way that you feel. You have a right to be angry. You have a right to be hurt. You also have a right to heal. The hardest part about sexual assault isn't the act. The act happens. It happens in this definite point in time. Like, starts here, ends here, it's over. It's the lingering effects that make us scared, make us fearful, make us not want to share ourselves with other people out of fear of what they'll think about us, out of fear of what we think about ourselves. It's a whole lot of stuff that goes on in our mental psyche that affects how it is that we deal with all of our future relationships. As the person that is the support person for this person that's gone through it, express your concern, let them know that you care about them. Let them know that you want to be there for them. PTSD is a very, we talked about it a little bit earlier. It's like, it is a aftermath. It's a symptom of the trauma. You will go through it if you don't deal with it, if you don't try to figure out how to manage your feelings about it, manage your experiences, and learn to separate yourself from that act. And this is actually, thank you, it's leading into, there is nothing wrong with reaching out for help. There's nothing wrong. If you need to talk to a psychologist, therapist, you have to rid yourself of all of the negativity, all of the trauma that is associated with it. And there's also the National Sexual Assault Hotline, whose number is 800-656-HOPE, which is 4763. Now, I did mention that because, again, part of this conversation is really about, understanding culturally how it impacts us. And as a Black woman, that's my niche, where I'm talking about how this impacts us as an African American community. But it's not isolated to African Americans, so don't take it that way. During slavery, there was a lot of messed up stuff that happened to our Black men as slaves. There were various ways that sex was used as torture and punishment. So rape and sexual abuse happened between men and women. They tried to fight back, and many people died because of it. The messed up part really is that there was this psychological impact that left scars that are referred to as soul murder. There was no protection for us because we were property. Men especially didn't have their sexual assaults even reported or validated in any way, because the men didn't get pregnant. We have the mixed babies because there was proof that white men were having sex with Black women, but there was no proof on the male side, right? So what happens is, when the general issue of rape became gender biased, it invalidated the male's ability to effectively address their issues, their sexual concerns. It was common practice. The masters had sex with their merchant, even though they were married and had girlfriends, they would still do fucked up stuff to our slaves, especially the men. It was very prevalent in the South and in Cuba, where there were secret sex farms for homosexual slave owners. White women raped Black male slaves that had great physique and strength. It was like, oh, you're nothing but a piece of meat, a piece of property that can do anything with you, and how dare you tell me no? Rape is not necessarily just by force. I'm gonna throw you down and sit on top of you. No, it's a matter of making somebody do something sexually that they do not want to do. That is rape. So if you were not familiar with the definition, now you are. It was a way for white slave owners to have that dominance, to bring that Black male down from the kingsman that he is, or that he was back then. There was a term called buck breaking, where you would rape a male slave in front of the public to embarrass him and make him feel like less of a man, where men with families were forced to have sex with each other in front of their families. Black men were forced to rape their sons. They were raped in front of their sons. Many men would commit suicide or run away and never return just to avoid what the hell was going on with them. It was a way for the white supremacists to show their dominance. Now again, this was during slave times, but I wonder, and I ask myself all the time, like, what were the effects of this that linger on today? You know, there were breeding farms where abolitionists had to fight to reduce slavery, but at the same time, there was still sexual exploitation of men. There is where we had healthy, strong men that were forced to have sex with women to produce babies. They were not anything but sperm donors. And it didn't matter the familial relationship. It wasn't just your wife, your sister, your daughter, your neighbor's daughter. It didn't matter. As long as you were able to have sex, you could have somebody have sex with, or be forced to, have sex with at least 6 women per day. And again, no familial ties. So if this person happens to be your mother, then that's what it was. And actually, this is where the term motherfucker came from. You had black men that were forced to have sex with their mothers. Sad, but true. And if you didn't, as a form of punishment, if you got caught having sex with the master's wife or daughter, even if they wanted it or you were being raped by them, the white male master would castrate you or perform some type of genital mutilation because you were being raped. Like, how slave leaders, those that were leaders in the black community, in the black slave community, were castrated, and were called women to show their dominance. It was even to a point where black men were made to line up naked, and they were scrutinized and laughed at and discussed in a room full of white people. They danced naked and were made to rape slave virgins for the viewing pleasure of their white audience. It's a lot to take on as a black man. I mean, granted, our children are the people that we. It does sound like freedom. Castration does sound like freedom, but at the same time, you know, the penis is a man's manhood. That is a symbol of who they are. And to have it used as a tool against their families, against to be mocked and manipulated, to have all of this fucked up stuff happen to them, all because of their prowess. You know, it's just, I'm glad that I'm born in the time that I've been born. I don't think that I could have lived through that, and I'm grateful for those that did, because obviously my ancestors survived enough for me to be here today to talk to you. The whole point of this story, and I'm wrapping up, is to just remind you that there was a lot of terrible stuff that happened to us as a people. There are terrible things that are happening to all of us today. But if we don't learn to talk about it, if we don't learn to address how it is that we are being impacted by things from our past and how those things impact our future, we will never put ourselves in a cycle of being better people, being more sexually informed, being more expressive, being able to break down the ties and the walls that bound us to this sexual repression, where it's even hard just to have a dialogue about something that is so natural and is the thing that keeps us living as a people. Without sex, we die. Not only do we physically, we all just die. We're just never going to. This is what does this for us, and we shouldn't have to associate it with assault and abuse. So, I appreciate you guys for joining me, Nicole, you especially, because you were engaging, and I appreciate you. So again, these stories last on Instagram for 24 hours. So these will be reposted. I'm posting videos on IGTV. I am going to also post videos that are not necessarily on Instagram on YouTube. So if you like these videos and you want to see more, please subscribe to YouTube so you can have more insight into different topics. And also, remember, I am a certified sex coach, so if there are things that you need somebody to talk to and want to have conversations with, feel free to send me a DM and we'll talk through it. Everything I do across all social media is at DOYOUKNKY. KNKY stands for Know the New Kinky You. I am Shanae Jones, and I will see you again very soon. Next week, Wednesday, 10 o'clock.